The Myrtles Plantation is often regarded as one of the most haunted houses in all of America. And like many locations associated with the paranormal, it sits at the core of a powerful story. One of death, ghosts, and unanswered questions, all centered around an old plantation in the deep swamps of Louisiana. Built in 1796 by General David Bradford, a wealthy and influential figure fleeing charges from his involvement in the Whiskey Rebellion, he named it Laurel Grove, and it was meant to be a peaceful refuge amidst the political turmoil of the time. And the plantation is steeped in historical significance, but more importantly, paranormal lore. And it's safe to say that the house has seen its fair share of wealth and sorrow. When Bradford passed, the plantation was inherited by his daughter, Sarah, and her husband, a man named Clark Woodruff. However, the Woodruff family's time at the plantation is remembered for nothing more than personal tragedies, resulting in the death of Sarah and two of their children. Although this was allegedly due to yellow fever, there is a much more sinister story in the works. Legends blame their deaths on an enslaved woman named Chloe, a woman who suffered deeply at the hands of the Woodruff family and who is believed to haunt the site to this day. Beyond these individual tragedies, the plantation reflects the larger history of the South, particularly its dependence on enslaved labor, and the Myrtles, like other plantations, flourished economically because of this brutal system. The wealth that passed through its halls came at the expense of the people who were forced to work the land under inhumane conditions. These years saw prosperity on the surface, but the undercurrent of human suffering ran deep. In the years after the Civil War, the plantation changed hands several times, and each new owner brought their own chapter of both fortune and misfortune. The Sterling family, who took over in the late 1800s, remodeled and expanded the house, restoring it to its former grandeur. But even during this period of wealth and growth, the plantation couldn't escape the darkness of its past. And it was during this era that the infamous murder of William Winter occurred, yet another tragic death tied to the Myrtles. As time went on, the plantation fell into a state of disrepair, and it wasn't until the 20th century that the Myrtles was restored and transformed into the bed and breakfast that it is today. And though now it welcomes tourists from around the world, the house still seems to bear the weight of the lives that passed through it, those who lived in luxury and those who suffered in silence. The story of Chloe at the Myrtles Plantation is one of the most chilling and enduring legends tied to the property, but it's also steeped in ambiguity. So Chloe's tale reveals not just the ghostly history of the plantation, but the complex and dark relationships that existed in antebellum Louisiana. According to legend, Chloe was an enslaved woman who worked for the Woodruff family in the early 1800s, likely under the ownership of Clark Woodruff. Chloe's days were filled with endless toil. Her nights would have been restless and her mind racing with fear, uncertainty, and anger. But more than anything, Chloe knew one thing: she was at Clark's mercy. In some versions of the tale, Chloe wasn't just a servant. She was forced into an intimate relationship with Woodruff, likely against her will, knowing full well that refusing him would bring unimaginable consequences. While working within the house and caring for his family, she had no way to escape his reach. And Chloe's downfall came when she was caught eavesdropping on the family's private conversations. The motivation behind her eavesdropping is uncertain, but the likelihood is that she was probably trying to protect herself by listening in on conversations and hoping to find anything that might offer a clue about her future. When she was discovered listening in, Clark Woodruff's punishment was swift and brutal. He decapitated her ear. And from that day forward, Chloe wore a green turban to hide the physical scar of her mutilation, a constant reminder of the violence she had endured. But the scar wasn't just on her body, it also marked her spirit and festered into resentment. Legend has it that she feared being sent back to the grueling work of the fields, or being replaced by another enslaved woman in Woodruff's personal life. And in desperation, she sought control in the only way she thought possible, by taking revenge. Chloe, according to legend, baked a birthday cake laced with poison, intending to sicken or perhaps kill the family that had taken so much from her. But the poison wasn't precise. It killed Woodruff's wife Sarah and their 2 children, but Clark survived. The other slaves, terrified that her actions would bring even harsher punishments on them all, took matters into their own hands. They dragged her out, hung her from a tree, and threw her body into the Mississippi River. No trial, no mercy, just swift, violent justice, met out by those as desperate and fearful as she had been. Chloe's ghost is said to remain on the plantation, a tragic figure forever tied to the place of her death, and she's most often seen wearing the green turban that hid her mutilation. Visitors to the Myrtles have reported seeing her ghost in photographs, appearing as a shadowy figure lurking near the house, or even peeking out from behind windows. And in one famous photograph, she can be seen standing between 2 of the building's structures. Another story that stands out in the haunting history of the Myrtles Plantation is the tale of William Winter. Winter's life took a grim turn on January 26, 1871, when a stranger ended it violently on the plantation's porch. But it's the eerie, spectral aftermath that keeps his name alive. Winter was a lawyer who married into the Sterling family, the owners of the Myrtles at the time. And after joining the household, he was thrust into the plantation's long and tragic history, but no one could have predicted how his life would end there. One evening, an unknown horseman rode up to the house. The rider called out Winter's name, and when Winter stepped onto the front porch, a gunshot rang out. The bullet struck him and Winter fell mortally wounded. And this is where the ghostly legend begins, because some say Winter, though gravely injured, wasn't ready to give in to death just yet. He's said to have staggered back into the house, clinging to life as he tried to make it up the grand staircase, desperately calling out for his wife, but he never made it to her. And Winter collapsed on the 17th step, where his life finally slipped away. Winter's spirit is allegedly trapped in that final, agonizing moment. For generations, visitors to the Myrtles have reported hearing phantom footsteps, slow and heavy, echoing through the house. The steps always lumber up the staircase and stop at the 17th step. It's as if his ghost is still struggling to make that final journey, repeating his last moments over and over, unable to move on. The identity of Winter's killer was never uncovered, and some speculate it was a man with a personal grudge, while others suggest it was tied to post-Civil War tensions. Regardless, the murder remains unsolved, adding another layer of mystery to the tale. Winter's ghost isn't just a story whispered in the dark. People who stay at the Myrtles swear they felt a presence on most stairs. Others hear the steps but find nothing there, and some claim the air grows cold when they approach the 17th step. A haunting reminder that William Winter never reached his wife's arms. And to this day, the tragic tale of William Winter's murder and his ghostly footsteps have made him one of the Myrtles' most infamous spirits. One whose story is grounded in actual history, but lives on through the eerie accounts of visitors who have heard his final steps.